Hi friend, thank you for watching the video. Click like and subscribe.
The Last of Us Season 1 Episode 2 Recap. What happened? As Joel and Tess lead Ellie up what they believe is a dangerous climb to the Firefly compound in Beacon Hill, they encounter a haunted site with several fallen skyscrapers and pouring rain. Others act in unknown ways. When Ellie first saw this episode, she was curled up in a patch of grass, sun and flipped. It is only when the camera angle changes that we see that she is actually lurking inside an old, dilapidated building. Of course, Eli didn't know very well. I grew up with it, wondering that perhaps more than anyone else, because of its resistance to the dreaded fungal infection, how to grow inside it. There are some cool first meet scenes in this episode with Ellie, who was initially portrayed as a sassy inmate, bored and angry. She is even more upset this week, at one point teasing Joel and Tess about their plague paranoia by pretending to smile like an infected person. But he also makes funny dry jokes. When asked where she learned to carry a sharp knife, she exclaims, "The circus." He says their road to Beacon Hill is the long way or we're dead, and he replies, "Based on that little information, I'd vote the long way." He explained a lot about this. Why? Life until now, spending her days in classes with the other QZ kids, learning about the culture they can't see firsthand, and spending her free time exploring the places she's not supposed to go. Let's revisit Jakarta in 2003 to find out the source of the confusion we heard last week about Joel's radio in Austin. The government appoints a professor of mycology named Abu Ratna, Kristen Hakim, to examine the woman's body. Since then, Ratna, Kristen Hakim, saw a dead body with fungus growing out of its mouth. Ratna, an entomologist working in Jakarta in 2003, knows the pain of humanity when she is having lunch when she is picked up by silent soldiers where she can't believe what she's being shown. She knows cordyceps can't survive in a human body, so why does the evidence under the microscope suggest otherwise? Examining the corpse of an infected woman confirms that her worst nightmare is coming true. In her view, the only solution is to bomb the place and kill everyone within it for the greater good. Ratna is the first to recognize the scale of the cordyceps threat and understand the cruel calculus needed to, maybe, contain it. That's what happened in Boston, where the bombing worked because the government managed to contain the epidemic long enough to create a safe environment. Ellie wakes up and remembers that being there makes others suspicious. He begins his first full day with Joel and Tess armed with questions he doesn't know the answers to. How come he didn't come back? I don't know. Why didn't Marlene kill him? He doesn't know either. And when he goes to use the bathroom, Joel isn't sure it's appropriate. It seems right and wise for Tess to finish her job, but Joel isn't worried about killing Ellie if she returns to QZ. Better than them, right? However, Tessie wins and Ellie jokes that she might be the one infected. She takes his leadership very seriously. She may not have morals, but he didn't want to die. But as Joel and Tess tell Ellie they only know about the plague from reading books and hearing it through the grapevine, there are still plenty of infected killing machines out there throughout the city, stuck on their stools in the streets to stay connected to an underground fungal network. And as they also explain, while Ellie may be the one person who can't be turned by one of these humanoid beasts, you're not immune from being ripped apart. So with the stakes well set, this suspenseful episode follows what is meant to be a simple premise. Ellie is given to the Fireflies, who then take her to the Western Station as a resource. A vaccine that saves humanity, as Joel and Tess get a truck full of personal gas batteries. Joel doesn't care about Ellie's future. He treats it like a package that must be delivered and completed. Tess tells Ellie what she knows about how cordyceps work, including underground wires that can connect them from miles away and runes to attack prey from afar. Unfortunately for Tess, this prophecy did not take long to come true. But first the trio must enter the cordyceps-covered museum. It's hard bones, which means it can be a safe place. However, this is not the case. A new corpse shows for the first time that they are not alone in the museum. Then there is a clicking sound, a sound Joel and Tess recognize, which means they are in the middle of nowhere infected. As in the game, this is where the episode starts to get really scary. On the second floor, Joel, Ellie, and Tess meet people, if that's a good word, at the high level of cordyceps disease. Their heads are like big mushrooms. Although they cannot see, they can hear and use this sense to track their prey. The party tries their best to steal from the show, but they end up fighting infected and then making a hasty exit after a string of close calls that are maybe more than close calls. Ellie's bitten again and resists infection again as well. Walking across the roof, Tess rebukes Joel's fearlessness of pessimism, exclaiming, "Good news. Can you do it?" He believed in the mission, not just the reward at the end. Ellie is a reality and the best hope for everyone. And that makes Tess' decision to sacrifice herself worse than it could have been. E.g., Ellie isn't the only one to be bitten at the museum, and when they discover the State House contains only the corpses of the fireflies who've killed each other after some were infected, Tess makes herself a central part of a booby trap that will keep the rampaging infected from claiming Joel and Ellie. It works, despite a lighter that fails to light until the last possible moment. As the government opens fire, Tess volunteers to blow up the Capitol State House, holding off the creature long enough for Joel and Ellie to escape danger. There is some symbolism in this explosion, which destroys a classic piece of American architecture. In fact, throughout the episode, our heroes end up trashing a lot of the past. They knock over antiquities when they scramble through a museum, and it seems like with each step forward the road behind them closes off. In other words, there is no returning to the way things were. All that matters is what Tess says before she dies: save who you can save. That's who, not what. Joel and Ellie begin the next phase of their journey. Questions and observations of The Last of Us recap, HBO Series 2023, second episode. This episode is all about Tess. She can envision a future. She wants to know things about other people. Episode 2 is about her personality refracting off of Ellie and Joel, and what's revealed about the main characters in that light. I've seen a number of YouTube videos theorizing that the source of the fungal infection is contaminated flour. Sarah, Joel, and Tommy pointedly avoid any food with flour in it in episode 1, and in this episode, the outbreak is sourced to a flour and grain factory in Indonesia. It's an interesting Easter egg if you're into that sort of thing, though I am not. There's a snippet in the intro sequence where we see an abstracted person's face. The fungal growth then continues out of the forehead, just as cordyceps really do to their insect hosts. There was a whole brouhaha over the show not having fungal spores in it like the game did. Well, if you care about that, Ellie says the word spores around the 20-minute mark. Eat your heart out. This has been this week's edition of Spore Watch. I would not count on this being a recurring segment. A frog plays a piano in this episode. The piano sounds shockingly good for being submerged in water and presumably not being tuned for some 20 years. Every piano tuner I've ever spoken to says you need to tune them at least once a year, or the pins get messed up. Maybe I've been getting ripped off. Speaking of, this episode features the first scene of Ellie and Joel alone together. They don't really know what to say to one another at this point, and why should they? Not only are they separated by a generation, but the generation gap between them is also a chasm. Joel watched the world he knew fall apart. Ellie knows no other world than the post-cordyceps wasteland. What do they have to talk about? That said, Ellie does know the world of before, if mostly from books. Her antics in the hotel lobby serve as a reminder that she's still a kid at heart, but also that this is her first time being in a hotel at all. Much of the pre-infected world is made up of places and things she's never experienced firsthand. In a way, this museum to State House trek is like a high school field trip from hell. Christine Hakim, who plays Ratna, will likely be unfamiliar to most viewers outside of Indonesia. She's been a big star there since the 1970s, however. Infected was written by Craig Mazin and directed by the HBO series co-creator and The Last of Us game writer, Neil Druckmann. These early episodes are understandably keeping the core creative staff at the wheel of the ship. Main cast Pedro Pascal as Joel Miller, Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Guest cast Gabriel Luna as Tommy Miller, Merle Dandridge as Marlene, Jeffrey Pierce as Perry Anna Torv as Tess, Storm Reed as Riley, Nico Parker as Sarah Miller, Murray Bartlett as Frank, Nick Offerman as Bill Lamar Johnson as Henry, Kevin Woodard as Sam Scott Shepard as David Retina Wesley as Maria Graham Green as Marlon Elaine Miles as Florence Melanie Linsky as Kathleen Ashley Johnson as Anna Troy Baker as James Natasha Mumba as Kim. Timbo Brad Leland as Danny Adler.